If you're a women's ministry leader, a small group leader, a pastor, a lay counselor, a mentor, or someone who is just a friend or family member of a woman in a difficult marriage, then there are things that you can say trying to help that actually do more harm than good. A woman in a difficult marriage is in a tough spot. She's trying to listen to what the church says, what people say. She's struggling to know, what does God say in his word about her difficult marriage. And yet she often takes things very black and white and very literally because of the situation that she's in. So here are some of the things that are actually scriptural and good, but when you say them to her, they actually cause her pain. The first one is submit to your husband. She hears, do everything my husband says. Don't stand up for myself. And the problems are my fault because I don't submit enough. Now we know Ephesians 5:22 through 24 tells a wife to submit to her husband as unto the Lord. And yet her husband is probably telling her that if only she would submit, everything would be okay. He is most likely using that to shut her up from talking to him about the problems and confronting him on the things that are painful for her. So when you say to her that the solution to her problems and her pain is to submit, it is confusing to her. The next one is love your husband. She hears, never give up, keep hoping, and persevere. Don't be angry. If you loved him enough, he'd be different. Now we know 1 Corinthians 13 talks about love, and it uses some of those words as a description. And yet for her in a difficult marriage, when you say those things, it means just hang in there, be tough, just keep tolerating. The next one is your suffering will work for good. She hears, keep suffering, tolerate things as they are, and don't try to change them. God will reward you for everything. Now 1 Peter 3:17 does tell us that our suffering for good will be rewarded by the Lord. But I wonder, if you make a stand in a difficult marriage, it is actually more difficult to do that. You will often endure more repercussions than if you just continue tolerating status quo. That could really mean what suffering for doing good is. The next one is Christians don't have rights. She hears you shouldn't be expected to be treated well by your husband, and you shouldn't tell him when he mistreats you. And we know scripture talks about laying down our rights, and there are times to do that, but there are also times to stand up for our rights. And Jesus and the apostles, Paul, Peter, all of them laid down their rights when it was in the best interest of the gospel, and at times when it was also in the best interest of the gospel or the person, or making a stand for righteousness or rightness, then they stood up for their rights. The next one is die to yourself. We know Colossians 3:3 and John 12:25 talks about dying to ourselves and living to the Lord, and to deny ourselves for Christ. But what she hears is, my needs don't matter and I shouldn't ask for what I need. We're to die to ourselves and our sin nature in context of our relationship with Christ, not in our relationship with our husband. Our needs do matter. Her needs matter always. And she needs to know that it's okay to have needs and have hurts and have pains, and that she can and is entitled to have those needs met. The next one is have a gentle and quiet spirit. She hears, be quiet, don't say anything to your husband about the problems. Just trust God and they'll be taken care of. 1 Peter 3:1-4 does tell a woman to be quiet and to win her husband, her unsaved husband, over to the Lord by her behavior that is a witness of her faith. But scripture also in many other places tells us to speak the truth in love, confront what is wrong, shine the light on darkness. So this scripture does not keep her from speaking the truth to her husband, setting boundaries, or talking about the problems. The next one, make Jesus your husband. She hears, you shouldn't feel bad about your problems. If you were a good Christian, Jesus would be enough for you. Isaiah 54:5 does say that God is the husband of a woman in a marriage where her husband does not love her, and a woman that is alone. But when you tell her that, you're saying to her, you shouldn't hurt. You shouldn't feel the pain. And really, she does need to feel the pain. She does need to address the pain and deal with the problem. It is good and healthy to feel when we are hurt and harmed by somebody. The next one is you have to forgive your husband. She hears you have to forgive and to continue to tolerate the mistreatment. Now in Matthew 6:14-15, Jesus told us in the Lord's Prayer that we do need to forgive those that harm us, or we will not be forgiven by God. Yes, she needs to forgive. But that does not prevent her also from setting boundaries, saying no to being mistreated, and taking a stand for what is wrong, against what is wrong. The next one is you can't divorce or separate. She hears there is no hope and God doesn't care about your pain. And we know that God hates divorce. We also know that God hates the sin in a difficult marriage and the pain and the things that are going on. When you immediately say this to her, you're telling her, I'm closing a door. Even if things are so bad that you would need to do that, you can't. And there are some marriages that in order to let somebody know that you're very serious about needing to have the problems addressed, some men will not change if you don't let them know that if there is no change, that you will separate or divorce. And even then, some will not change. I don't condone divorce as an easy solution, but there are times that women in difficult marriages need to have that as an option in order to set effective boundaries. The next one is you brought this on yourself. God is letting you reap what you sow. And you know, Galatians 6:7-8 does tell us that we reap what we sow. But God is not punishing her. If she made some choices knowingly that a guy with problems or an unsaved guy and she married him anyway, yes, she is reaping the consequences of those choices. But it does not help to tell her that. She's already feeling that pain and feeling overwhelmed by the problems. It is better to empathize with her and give her opportunities to be heard and have her pain validated, and then maybe refer her to some resources that can really help her. So if you're dealing with a woman in a difficult marriage, I would challenge you to be still, hear her heart, understand that the depth of pain that she feels is so great that she needs to just have you listen, empathize, and then offer her real hope with resources that can help her.